And all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The elusive relief package. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Congress still scuffling to find a compromise plan to provide Americans relief from the coronavirus economic impact. House Speaker Pelosi says there won't be a deal this week and maybe not next either.
Now, if we need more time, then we take more time. But we have to have a bill.
That could push the agreement beyond Christmas. The House Republican leader says that's unacceptable.
Republican House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy of California accusing Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of purposely holding up the Paycheck Protection Program because she simply wanted to hurt the president's re-election chances.
More than 40 times the Republicans have brought to the floor the ability to vote to bring assistance. More than 40 times the Democrats have said no.
No, said McCarthy, despite the fact that there's more than $138 billion still sitting there for small businesses in the PPP program.
Fox's Kevin Corke, evidence of the need. The government reported Thursday applications for unemployment last month were higher than expected. The swing states being sued by the state of Texas have filed their responses to the lawsuit with the U.S. Supreme Court. Now the justices must decide whether they will hear the case. The charges Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin violated the Constitution with election changes not approved by state lawmakers. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton telling Fox News at Night.
I'm hoping it's quick because I think America needs to get this resolved as quickly as possible. And we just want the opportunity to have our arguments heard because we think they're good arguments. They're based on the Constitution. And we think it's fair for all Americans to have this done well and to have it done soon.
Time magazine has named President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris as their 2020 Persons of the Year. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
As we usher in the holiday season, we want to express our gratitude and appreciation for the lessons that have allowed us to navigate an unprecedented year. We recognize the impact the pandemic has brought to the world and express our condolences to those who have suffered. We are focused on family and what matters most as a community. Our team at Security Title is proud of the work we do. May this holiday season bring your family renewed hope. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Security Title.
A big step closer to Americans rolling up their sleeves for the coronavirus vaccine.
Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine has been endorsed by an FDA advisory panel made up of non-government experts in vaccine development, infections, and medical statistics. The 17-4 vote concludes a review to see if the vaccine is safe and effective for emergency use in patients 16 years and older. A final decision on the vaccine must still come from the FDA. The U.S. set a single-day record for COVID-related deaths Wednesday with more than 3,100. Pfizer expects to have about 25 million doses of its two-shot vaccine ready by the end of this month, with initial supplies reserved for healthcare workers and vulnerable populations. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The federal government has executed a convicted killer despite pleas from celebrities and former jurors. Brandon Bernard was given a lethal injection Thursday at the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, for his role in the murders of two youth ministers in Texas 21 years ago. Another execution is scheduled Friday. Airbnb checking in as a publicly traded company Friday. Its initial public offering appears to have been a success.
The stock skyrocketed up 115% at the open at $146 a share. Last night, it priced at $68, so more than twice that right out of the gate. Earlier this year, you saw its valuation climb from $30 billion, then to $47 billion, where it's trading now, roughly $100 billion. A couple of things. The market is hot right now. Investors are looking for diversification and new names, so there's some appetite for this stock. But Airbnb is also a unicorn. It totally disrupted the hotel and travel industry like Uber did with taxis. But unlike Uber, this is a company that saw profitability in 2017 and 18, and it's back from its pandemic lows, showing a profit in the latest quarter too. Jackie DeAngelis, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan.
Hafa I'm Chelsea Nicholas, and I'm the co-chair for this year's G is for Giving, as well as a proud alumna of the University of Guam. G is for Giving is an annual campaign that kicks off on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving and runs through the end of the year. Known as Giving Tuesday, it is an international day of giving, and this year's theme is Weaving Community. On Guam, we know a little something about weaving community, as we're all intertwined and interconnected in the spirit of Inaf Malik. When one of us thrives, the island thrives. This is why I support G is for Giving's mission to support scholarships, programs, and research. As an alumna, I know how difficult it is to balance going to school and worrying about how you're going to pay for school. In these uncertain times, students are even more at risk because of economic hardship beyond their control. G is for Giving aims to bridge that gap and take away at least some of the burden. For more information on how you can give, visit give.uog.edu or call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 735-2957. Have a happy and safe holiday.
Did you know your smartphone is one of the most powerful tools in our fight against COVID-19? That's why we're bringing you the Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app. Developed by Google, Apple, and the PathCheck Foundation, the app works by letting you know if you've been exposed to someone who's positive. It's completely voluntary, and more importantly, it's anonymous. Add your phone to the COVID fight. Go to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And here we are, our least favorite day of the week, the last day of the week. That means that Jose and I are going to be like a couple of grizzly bears and go into hibernation for the next 70 hours until we can get back in the environment where we thrive, which is right here with our tailgaters and our international radio listening audience. But don't worry, we'll tough it out. We'll be back on Monday. Let's go straight to Zemi Ikutni. And the Daily News has a guest editorial special to USA Today, which means it's really good. Much better than this editorials dealing with local stuff that nobody really cares about when we can read about what's going on in New York City, right? And this is what Gabrielle Delmonico tells us. Pandemic education loss hurts millions of kids. I'd have never thought of that in a million years. A million kids. For the second time this year, the largest school district in the United States closed recently after New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio's announcement. My 8-year-old daughter was devastated. She missed her friends, but more than that, she longed for her nurturing environment of the classroom. Yeah, we'll leave it to Bill de Blasio. He's not content with the other shenanigans he pulls. He even has to break the hearts of 8-year-olds. He just spreads a little sunshine wherever he goes. Enough of the Daily News running editorials from somewhere else. And we go to the Post. And, you know, in baseball, if you follow baseball, you can have a really good pitcher. And that pitcher can maybe go out there and really burn for 9 straight innings. Fastballs, curveballs, change-ups, knuckleballs, spitballs, whatever. But if a pitcher throws a complete game, he's not going to come back tomorrow and pitch again. And he's probably going to pitch the day after that. Maybe the day after that, maybe not. Pitchers have to be able to rest. You younger fellows wouldn't remember this, but back in the 1948 World Series, the Boston Braves, Boston Braves.
Pre-Atlanta.
Pre-Milwaukee.
Oh, that's right.
Boston, Milwaukee, Atlanta. Yeah. So the Braves had a couple really good pitchers, Johnny Sain and Warren Spahn. So when somebody asked the Braves manager what his pitching lineup was at the beginning of the series, he said, Spahn, Sain, pray for rain. And I think that's where we are. I think the Post editorial writers have been throwing too many fastballs. They've been completing too many games. It's time to bring in a relief pitcher and give their starting pitcher a little slack, because they seem to be mixing metaphors here, running out of gas. Here is today's offering. Guam's COVID-19 risk score now at a very low 1.5. It's the governor's turn to ease the restrictions. On November 8, Governor Lou Leon Guerrero made a promise. Like this is news? Yeah. If we achieve Wuhan virus area score of 5 for the next few weeks, then I will be inclined to lift additional social gathering restrictions. This is entirely possible if we all do our part. Wearing our mask. This is a quote now. Apparently the entire island has a single mask that we're supposed to climb behind.
That seems unsanitary.
Yeah, wearing our mask, practicing social distancing, being extra cautious around those not in our household, and staying home as much as possible, the governor said in a video post to social media. A risk score of 5.0 didn't happen during Thanksgiving, but we have a very good chance of getting more family members in our home the week leading up to Christmas Day, and maybe dining in at our favorite restaurants if the governor holds her end of the bargain up. In other words, if the governor keeps her promise. Now, you can't tell from looking at the governor's quote here from November 8, said she made it on TV and social media. I suspect they only showed the front of the governor. They didn't show crossed fingers around behind her back. Yeah. As of Wednesday, our risk score was 1.5. When the governor made her statement on November 8, our risk score was 9.8. Our risk level is 3 times lower than the ideal low-risk score benchmark that had been ingrained in us, the public. Somehow it wasn't ingrained very thoroughly in me. Ray doesn't call it the CAR score, he calls it the Cabrera score. Here's our risk score, and then they use a whole page to put single column of numbers down that whole page. And then onto the text, Thanksgiving, to adhere to the governor's Wuhan virus, as you were. We stayed home. Many of us stayed home for Thanksgiving. What's encouraging is that most of the people who are out and about are following the requirement for wearing masks. Now, I'm not wearing a mask right now. And although I tease about it and kid about it, if I have to cough, I usually warn the international radio listening audience to cover the speaker on their phone so they don't catch the germs of my cough. But obviously, I can't transmit whatever viruses are in my breath as I exhale over the airways. Now, I could wear a mask, and I could really look cool wearing a mask. You know, and I watch other people on TV, and they look so cool wearing their mask. I even have a mask that says on the front of it, "The Point." Good advertising device, yeah. But if I wore a mask, it only makes it harder for you to understand what I'm saying. I'm locked up in this room here with a double pane of glass between myself and the next human being.
That's me.
That would be Jose. Yeah. The other guy's gone.
A lot of people don't believe it, but I am a human being.
There you go. And even then, notwithstanding the double pane of glass, I'm more than 6 feet away from him. So I'm not communicating any viri, and I'm not inhaling any viruses. So the most important thing for me, I think, is to be able to speak clearly to the international radio listening audience. So I'm not wearing a mask. I see an awful lot of people on TV wearing the mask, not as having anything to do with disease prevention, but as an affectation. Sort of like going to Mexico and buying a sombrero as you stroll around.
Everybody's doing it.
Yeah, as you stroll around town to show people, you know, I'm really kind of with it here, you know.
That's okay. Similar to a mute button. When you cough, I have the mask button.
Very good, Jose. Okay, the day the governor made the promise to ease congregating during the holidays, if the risk score goes below 5, our risk score was 9.8. We've come a long way to get to this point. From a high double-digit risk score some weeks back. Now, it's the governor's turn to show us she's keeping her word. Yeah, and this, sorry, Guam Post, but you just don't get it. She's not doing anything for us. You know, I've used this analogy before. A guy was sitting on the curbstone beating himself on the head with a hammer. And someone came along and said, "Why do you keep beating yourself on the head with a hammer?" The guy said, "Because it feels so good when I stop." Yeah, so she's really, you know, she has killed the economy. She has, in a sense, attempted to make us virtual prisoners in our own homes. She's put roadblocks out on the highway. She created the myth, the legend, and the fact of the 19th floor. And now we're supposed to be grateful because now it's the governor's turn to show us she's keeping her word and let us function like we should be functioning anyhow. This is not a gift. She's not doing us any favors. No hurrahs for the governor. I think that's you know, kind of the underlying psychological power of the so-called Stockholm Syndrome. That Stockholm Syndrome, a person is held captive by other people. And over a long period of time, the captive starts to develop some affection for his captors. And one of the ways the captors promote this is, you know, by easing up on the punishment from time to time. And the captive thinks, "Whoa, wow, I'm really grateful for that. He only whipped me 3 times today instead of 5. Maybe maybe they're not so bad after all." Now it's the governor's turn to show us she's keeping her word. For the most part, Guam residents have been responsible, probably because of the tongue lashing we all got from Gemma Manglotnia. We have the lower than ideal risk score now at 1.5 as proof of shared responsibility.
Remember when your math teacher said, "That's a good answer, but I want to see your work"? I want to see their work.
I do too. Yeah. Yeah, you can't just write the answer down in your workbook and turn it. You got to show your work.
1.5.
Yeah,
What's
that's
that?
great. 1.5. But you know, the praise perhaps covers up the fact that the work isn't being showed. We have the lower than ideal risk score now at 1.5 as proof of shared responsibility. We're all in this together. Can't get it started, huh?
It's not going anywhere.
All right. I have my pen here. This is the one I use to award blue stars. I'll be saving some ink today. Okay, let's now proceed to the card for today. And I've got, as usual, I got program notes, and I've mentioned this before. You can go to the Jungle at, as you were Jungle Watch, at junglewatch.info, and you can usually find program notes and today's card when you get there. And then after the show, you can go to junglewatch.info, and you can watch a rebroadcast, or you can watch the Facebook broadcast. What am I trying to say here? The Facebook
link?
No, it's actually there. It's the live stream right there on Facebook. Yeah, and I encourage you to go there and make comments on Jungle Watch. There's a comment bar right below the day's episode. Click on a couple buttons. You can call yourself anonymous. You can call yourself Tailgater number 671, or any anonymous you want to use, and you can comment on what you saw on Tall Tales or what you heard on Tall Tales if you're listening to your radio. And you can add a lot, and you'll be communicating, again, with a worldwide audience. So program notes for today. Yesterday, I just got started on the item on the card called Compassion versus a woman's right to choose, which was based on a letter to the Post dealing with a miscreant shooting at a stray dog with a BB gun. And Dr. Tom Poole was, as usual, a fountain of good information on the subject. Dr. Tom Poole called up and corrected the facts stated in the newspaper story. It wasn't a BB gun. It was a pretty powerful weapon. And then Tom talked a little bit about animals and cruelty to animals and kind of a little bit of the philosophical aspect of why we should be kind to animals. And I want to pick up on that in this context of this first item on the card. And previous shows involved Joe St. Augustine showing that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Joe opposed the elimination of non-contributory lifetime pensions for governors, but co-sponsored a bill to micromanage the Attorney General. The a little knowledge is a dangerous thing was also demonstrated by Clint as he takes over the Guam Power Authority for the I put down CCP, Chinese Communist Party. I meant CCU, not CCP.
They're taking over.
Yeah. Okay, that Fab 4 returned to today's card, subnom, which for all you legal law and order buffs, subnom means under the name of, right? Subnom Senators St. Augustine, Barnes, Castro, and Clint versus GPA ratepayers. Now, I'm going to go to the bottom line on this one, and if those four horsemen have their way, you're going to be paying more for your power. I don't think anybody likes that. Tall Tales goes national with the case filed by the state of Texas and goes local with Javier Atalic's election contest. Two items of equal importance. One, the assistant mayor of Tamuning, the other, the president of the United States. Our local social justice warriors, the white coats for Black Lives Matter folks, are educated again. And lefties used to be champions of free speech. Now they oppose it, winding up with English as a microaggression for the left. So those last three have been on the card for a while. I always have interesting items. I never get to them, but that's the way with the card here on Tall Tales. Okay, let's start out with compassion versus a woman's right to choose. Animal cruelty. A brief glance through local news companies' Facebook pages will show this topic generates on average more comments than that of murder cases, legislative happenings, or even news of tax refund payments. The most recent case involving the recording and uploading of a video depicting an individual shooting a BB gun at a stray dog has captivated audiences for days. The dog reacts to the pain by running off. A news outlet found the said individual at his domicile and began an interrogation. As of now, the individual and recorder of the video have been arrested by GPD. I'm going to stop here for a second and pick up on some of the things that Dr. Tom Poole said. Tom Poole said, this was no BB gun. I alluded to my own Daisy Red Ryder BB gun that I have at home. I don't shoot at stray dogs with it, but I got it. Kind of nostalgia because I had one when I was a kid. And they're still it's still the same thing, the same BB gun. Well, Tom pointed out that this is an extremely high-powered air rifle. And he referred to it as an Air Force rifle. That doesn't mean it's something that those fellows in the blue bus driver uniforms, you know, the flyboys that they arm themselves with. I don't think that Air Force guys could be trusted with serious weapons like that. But air, you know, air force, the force of air, in other words. And Tom gave us some figures of the muzzle velocity of this thing, and it sounded like it's almost as powerful, or it has almost as much killing power as, say, did he say 22 long rifle?
22 caliber, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's pretty powerful because you could kill somebody.
I remember when I was learning to shoot guns, and my friends, this is in Georgia, everyone has, and we were shooting 22s at target. This is out in the field, and there was a cow pasture nearby. I said, let me shoot at a cow, thinking that leather would stop. They were, no. They took it away from me. He goes, that'll kill the cow.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was no sort of dismissible shooting at the dog to make him run away with a BB gun. This was serious. Tom said that it wounded the dog seriously, and the dog is still recovering. And kind of set the record straight on that. And then we talked a little bit about cruelty to animals. And Tom Poole is, of course, a veterinarian, a doctor of veterinary medicine. He happens to be the territorial veterinarian. And I can't tell you how happy that makes me that we have such a skillful and dedicated person working in that field. And then I posed a hypothetical question to Tom. Suppose that it were a BB gun instead of that powerful rifle. And he said, well, yeah, that's not a good idea. We shouldn't treat animals that way. And then I said, what is it about humans and dogs? We really have an affinity for dogs. In fact, one of my little throwaway lines is, if I see someone out walking a dog, I remind that dog walker, remember, man is the dog's best friend, which is true. And Tom said that men and dogs have been associated for thousands of years. And they kind of have a deal, a contract, that the dogs will be of service to humans, but humans won't be mean to dogs and will kind of look out for them. And I think that's probably true. You know, you see a stray dog running around, you're going to feel sorry for that dog. Unfortunately, sometimes that sympathy is misplaced because people start feeding the stray dog. And then instead of one stray dog, you're going to have a pack of stray dogs. So the compassion might be better exercised by trying to round the dog up and taking him up to gain. I know the program's kind of going to the dogs here, so I better take a break for a few minutes.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Buying a house, apartment, or condo? Selling your home or property? Or maybe you're renting a house, apartment, or condo on Guam. Whatever your real estate needs are, you can count on the professionals at Horizon Properties to take care of you. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonproperties.com or follow them on Facebook at Horizon Properties Guam. Maria Miller and the professionals at Horizon Properties. All you need to know in real estate. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so coming back from the dogs here, I read an interesting theory about dogs and humans, and it could be described along these lines. Dogs kind of invented themselves. Every dog that you'll ever see is descended from wolves, from the smallest Pekingese to the tallest Great Dane. If you go back far enough, you'll find a wolf. So as I understand it, when people started living in things that looked like, small villages or whatever, one of the first things that they had to create was a dump. So they took their scrap food and stuff like that and threw it out in the dump. And the wolves came around, sniffing around, and wanted to try to eat whatever they could find in the dump. Well, the most successful wolves in this undertaking were the wolves that had the smallest amount of fear of humans. So they could go up to that dump and not be scared off by an occasional visit by humans. So let's call that tameness. So the wolves that exhibited the most tameness tended to get the most food and tended to be reproducing more than the not-so-tame wolves. So over a long, long time, hundreds of years, he developed these wolves that were more tame than the other wolves. And people started noticing this, and they would grab wolf cubs when they're young and domesticate them, and they would then selectively breed the tame ones with other tame ones. So it just so happens that in the same genetic makeup that causes tameness, other physical characteristics are packed with it. Shorter noses, something that sounds like a bark instead of a howl, brown eyes instead of the wolf's gray eyes, and so on. So as humans develop this relationship with the dump feeders, through selective breeding, they started developing the traits in these wolf offspring, sort of, that would assist the humans in whatever it was that they were doing. So as an example, I understand that there are only 8 kinds of animals that can be herded. You can herd horses, you can herd cows, you can't herd cats, we know that.
They've tried.
Yeah, can't herd cats, senators, stuff like that. So some of these products, then, the ones that seem to have the best herding instinct were bred, selectively bred to develop the herding type dogs and the watchdogs and the kind of dogs that would crawl down into a hole and on and on and on. So over a long, long period of time with this selective breeding, we came up with Dachshunds and Great Danes, St. Bernards, Pekingese, Mexican hairless. Is that politically correct to say?
I think so.
Probably all right, huh?
I mean, some are second generation American Mexican hairless.
I suppose, yeah. So that, according to this theory that I read, is the advent of dogs. Well, that kind of fits into Tom Poole's theory that, we've kind of come along together over a long period of time, and that's why humans just seem to have this natural affection for dogs. People don't eat dogs, not in this country. Now, if you went to Hanoi, you'd find an entire street is nothing but dog merchants where you can go to buy dog meat. One store after another selling dog meat.
Yikes.
Yeah. Now, dogs are probably very clean animals, when you come around, probably a lot cleaner than pigs. But just the thought of eating dog meat, it just doesn't sit very well, does it? So I went into this here to show how it's not hard to understand why people can be compassionate about dogs and really get their backs up when they see that dogs are being mistreated, even if it's a stray dog and a, quote, BB gun. But going back to this article, this is Gia Righetti. She lays this out, how people are so concerned about what happens to dogs. And then she goes on to say, now imagine, please, if such attention and such resources was spent toward any other issue affecting our island, our people. Imagine if people felt so outraged, so moved to inspire change when a store owner is robbed and needs to recover lost goods, or if a neighbor loses everything in a house fire. Reward money for anything animal cruelty related is put forward faster than it would take to order a pizza for someone in need of a hot meal. Faster than it would take to pick up some flowers to drop off by your local hospital. Guam has an animal control problem, but maybe we also have a compassion problem. Human life is not equal to animal life. Value people. Now, you could see where I'm going with this. We're really concerned when we thought someone shot at a stray dog with a BB gun. There are those in our community have no problem at all in killing an unborn baby in the womb. Where's the compassion there? Shouldn't we be at least as compassionate to members of our own species as we are when we're thinking about dogs, notwithstanding our close relationship with dogs? How can a country go along, and how many abortions have there been?
I think it's over 60 million.
Over 60 million since
1973.
Since the Supreme Court killed all state laws that would have prohibited abortion in a case called Roe versus Wade. 60 million. And you don't see an awful lot of people being really compassionate about that. As a matter of fact, this is on the card as compassion versus a woman's right to choose. And of course, this is new speak, is right out of 1984 and Brave New World. We don't call it killing a child in the womb. We fancy it up by saying pro-choice. A woman has the right to choose what to do with her own body. And of course, by extension, she has the right to choose what to do with somebody else's body, the one inside of her. And this is celebrated as, the proponents of abortion on demand would tell you it's a civil right, right up there with freedom of speech and free exercise of religion, etc. So I agree with Gia Rigetti, and I pick up her point and adopt it as my own. Can't we care as much about unborn children in their mother's wombs as we do about stray dogs? It doesn't seem like that is asking too much. Okay, well, let's find out what the most dangerous man in the room can tell us about dogs. Go ahead, R. Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, when I was a little boy, I had the traumatic experience of seeing my first dog getting run over right in front of my eyes. And let me tell you, that really traumatized me as a little kid. I still have issues when I see an animal, especially a dog, in the process of dying, when it's squealing and just that horrible sound. It causes a great deal of anxiety to this day. And I think one of the reasons that abortion doesn't have that same connection is because there's a total disconnect with the act of killing the fetus. I'm sure you're familiar with the documentary Silent Scream.
Sure.
Yeah. At some point, the fetus, the baby, I hate calling it fetus, it's a baby, develops a reaction to pain. And at some point, it actually exhibits the same behavior as screaming. It's just nobody hears it. It's in the womb. And I'm sure if people saw the actual process of dismembering a fetus or crushing the skull with a forceps and pulling it out of the womb, there would be a lot less abortions. And I'm not for people having babies that they can't raise, they feel incapable of raising. I wish there was as much emphasis put on adoption. I was a social worker for about a year in the local child welfare services, and there are people desperate.
You have a right to remain silent.
Yeah.
And anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. That was a pretty dangerous admission there, R. Carl. R. Carl was a social worker. This was before you became the most dangerous man in the room, right?
I want to make clear, I wasn't a socialist worker. I was a social worker. Okay. No, it may not cause any confusion there. But, yeah, it was really quite touching to see the lengths that people were willing to go to adopt. Sometimes it was family members, aunties adopting nieces or nephews or like that. But sometimes it was just people who had no biological connection to the child. They just desperately wanted a child. And there are many famous adoptees. Steve Jobs is one of them. He was adopted.
That's right.
Yeah, and so was the founder of Wendy's. he was another famous adoptee. There are quite a number of them in that elite club.
Well,
so,
when you start out as humans, as moral humans, we should always look out for people who are weaker than we are. And we ought to have some sense of protecting those who are weaker than we are. And what can be weaker than a poor, helpless child in the womb? And to come along and say, well, I have a right to do that because I can. Pretty rough, isn't it, Carl?
Yeah, I just think that the left has succeeded in a total disconnect with the actual process of aborting the fetus, and that's what happens. We become kind of numb to the process, and like Jose said, there's over 60 million infants that have been aborted since 1973. Roe v. Wade, and it's just really, it's very very sad. There will always be abortion. I just wish they'd have sent it to the states as.
Well, it was a matter of state law. The way the country started out, we had states that had almost total control of relationship between government and individual persons. And some states had, all of the states dealt with abortion differently until the politicians in black robes came along and found a right to privacy in the Constitution. And based on what they miraculously found, they called all of those state laws unconstitutional. Carl, I got to take a short break, but I'm glad you chimed in, okay?
Okay, Bob, thank you.
Right after the break, we're coming back to someone who will have some interesting things to say about abortion, and that'll be Tim Rohr.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show. Starring Senator Mona Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mona Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today. Like listen to us, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Okay, so here we are back on the air after that imaginative commercial. Who is this guy, Ray Gibson, anyhow?
I hear you have to wake up very early in the morning to find it.
Yeah, you got to get up pretty early in the morning to beat Ray Gibson at anything. Okay, Tim, tell me what we need to know about abortion.
Bob, I was just about to go out on a walk down the road with my dog and smoke a cigar when I made the mistake of tuning into her show and got pissed off again.
Well, you know, it's always a mistake to listen to Tall Tales unless you want to tune into something that's really interesting, informative, exciting, and of such a nature that you really can't put it down. So I can sympathize with you, Tim.
All of the above is true, except for I have made an oath to myself that I keep breaking not to listen to you live, so I can't respond to you on things like this live and then make more enemies than I already have. But I want to clarify a couple things. I heard Carl mention something about adoption. You know, first of all, this needs to be really dealt with. In I think 2013, and I still have the record. I contacted what is it, Child Protective Services. I'm not sure what the agency was, but there were no babies available for adoption, and there was a 5-year waiting list. Meanwhile, we were aborting 300 plus babies a year. That's actual numbers. So the question is, what's the real reason for abortion? It's not that it has nothing to do with parents that aren't desirous of adopting or fostering or all the other BS that the freaking legislature has used over these years and other people. There's people dying to adopt babies at a cost of more than $30,000 to even adopt a baby, but they're being aborted at the rate of one. I think at the time it was like 1.5 to 2 babies per day. While there's a 5-year waiting list to adopt children. The real reason for the abortion rate was actually spelled out by, I believe he might have been a friend of yours, a Marine. He was a Marine, Mike Carey.
Good friend.
Good friend, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Carey, if I can go back, I think it was in 2012, got up on a stage and told the story of a beautiful Palauan child that he adopted, who was the survivor of an abortion at GMH. And the reason for the abortion was that the mother had an affair with somebody while her boyfriend was deployed on duty somewhere, and came back unexpectedly. So she had an abortion. The child survived. It was a chemical abortion, a saline abortion, which basically burns the child to death in the womb. But this child came out and still survived. And there was a sympathetic nurse at GMH. I have the whole thing on record from Mike Carey, that the child survived, and that this sympathetic nurse called Mike, somehow knew him, and begged him to come to the hospital and take this child away. At the time, Mike Carey spoke at this seminar. I forget what it was, some kind of a seminar where he gave witness to all this. The child was about 11 or 12 years old. Was some high level, white, black, orange, whatever belt in some kind of, karate or whatever the heck it was, and a beautiful child, at that point. And he showed pictures of what this child had become. And but for Mike Carey and a nurse who happened to intervene, what happened was the child was the mother had gone to one of the local abortion clinics. I don't know if it was run by Dr. Freeman or Dr. Gringlet. What was the name? It started with a G.
Grimley, maybe? Grimley?
I'll look it up, but there was only 2 advertised abortion clinics. I mean, lots of doctors did abortions, but there were only 2 doctors that did them exclusively under the banner of, bring your body here and we'll kill your baby for you. Actually, it was at the corner of Marine Drive and Epow Road. Actually, the clinic is still there. I don't know if they still kill babies there or not. But anyway, the baby happened to. What happens in a chemical abortion, if you can allow me to say this, it's usually a pill or some kind of a suppository or some kind of internal chemical solution that's administered. It's usually for late-term abortion where the baby's already formed and they simply can't just, go inside and pull the baby out or cut it up into pieces. They have to deliver it whole. And so this baby is pretty far along when this woman got the notice that her, boyfriend or whoever it was impregnated her was coming home before schedule. She went to this Dr. G, I'll just call him that for now. And so for some reason, things didn't go right. She got spooked, went to GMH, and delivered the baby damaged but still alive. And Dr. G found out about it, showed up at the emergency room door at GMH and demanded to be let in order for him to finish off the baby. I know this because of a certain doctor, he's now deceased, personally told me that he happened to be in the emergency room that night and forbid that doctor to come in because he didn't have hospital privileges. Meanwhile, there was a nurse who got a hold of that baby and somehow kept that baby alive and eventually called Mike Carey. Mike Carey would have, I hope he's still around. I know he's moved to the States someplace, but he would be great. He's the best witness of this all because he was already, I think, in his 60s when he adopted this child. And this has been at least 10 years ago. And he couldn't be more proud. Mike, he couldn't be more proud of this child who survived an abortion and became just a beautiful, she must be maybe even close to 20 by now, really.
Let me fill in some of the blanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Okay, the doctor's name was Griley.
Griley, there you go.
And the occasion where you heard Mike speak was a rally for life at the Phoenix Center at Father D.
Wow, you got all that. I can't even remember that.
And I visited Mike. Mike is in South Carolina now. I visited him a couple of times in South Carolina, and that girl is amazing. She is.
I didn't even know you knew all that.
She is bright, a very good student, an athlete, a very pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't ask if you could sit down and fashion a child by yourself. You couldn't have come up with a better product than that young lady. So the story has an extremely happy ending, and God bless Mike Carey. He is a really. I really hated to see him leave. The island is a little bit lesser for Mike's having left. But anyhow, those are some of the Blakes, Tim.
Good. Thank you for that. You know the story better than I do. I just happened to overhear lots of those parts. I know that 5 o'clock's coming up, but over the years, I have fought with everybody from B.J. Cruz to Respicio to Juan Pat to the now deceased Ben Pangilinan, over this facade that nobody wants these babies, so we might as well kill them. When that's all a bunch of, I wish I could say bullshit, but I can't on your show, so I'll just say BS. It's all a bunch of BS. There's no such thing as children that aren't wanted, according to CPS, and I'll find out. I'll call them myself and find out how long the waiting list is to adopt a baby. It was 5 years in 2013, and I'm sure it hasn't changed, because the real reason for abortion is basically birth control. It's failed birth control. It's people screwing around and finally, having no choice but the final cover-up, for infidelity or whatever the heck it is, is to abort the baby. That's what's really happening here, and that's why we'll never get to the bottom of this. That's what this is really all about. And that whole right to privacy, that you bring up relative to the case in Griswold, that's.
He dropped off, huh? I guess your call dropped, Mike. Mike. I guess your call dropped, Tim. Yeah, so the right of privacy came out of a case called Griswold versus Connecticut, which was a put-up job. It was some people who got together and conspired to create a fact pattern to get that matter before the U.S. Supreme Court to deal with a law in Connecticut that made it a crime for married people to use birth control. And the case, Griswold versus Connecticut, went to the Supreme Court the second time, or that issue went to the Supreme Court twice. And I'll tell you about the first time right after our big halftime show. I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Closer to approval. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. An advisory committee of the Food and Drug Administration voting to recommend the emergency use of the Pfizer coronavirus vaccine. The full FDA's approval needed but expected distribution ready to go almost immediately.
Every state has already made a plan about how they would make this allocated based upon what the priorities are. So what are the priorities? Because we don't have enough doses for everybody right now. So the initial priorities are for healthcare providers, because they're on the front lines, and also for people who are very vulnerable, that is, residents of nursing homes and assisted living.
Dr. Francis Collins, the director of the National Institutes of Health, on Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum. 2 other vaccines are queuing up for FDA approval as well. But Congress still struggling with a coronavirus relief package. There are reports the $900+ billion bipartisan compromise is in trouble. House Speaker Pelosi says there won't be a deal this week.
When we have the text and the agreement, then we will make that public, go to the floor, pass the bill.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says Democrats have rejected more than 40 Republican offers. He blames the Speaker.
It was more important for her to hurt President Trump politically than to help the American people.
The Senate Friday will consider the stopgap spending bill to keep the government running for another week. In his final statement Thursday evening, Brandon Bernard offered an apology to the family of the couple he helped to kill in Texas 21 years ago. He was then executed by lethal injection at the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, where another execution is planned on Friday. A mixed day on Wall Street Thursday, the Dow dropping 69 points, the S&P 500 off 4, but the Nasdaq gained 66. America is listening to Fox News.
As we usher in the holiday season, we want to express our gratitude and appreciation for the lessons that have allowed us to navigate an unprecedented year. We recognize the impact the pandemic has brought to the world and express our condolences to those who have suffered. We are focused on family and what matters most as a community. Our team at Security Title is proud of the work we do. May this holiday season bring your family renewed hope. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Security Title.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
The states being sued in the U.S. Supreme Court over their election procedures have filed their formal responses.
Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan have filed their written brief in response to a lawsuit filed by the Texas Attorney General, which seeks to contest election results in the 4 battleground states, claiming those states didn't follow their own state law. The brief argues that what Texas is doing is asking the Supreme Court to reconsider a mass of baseless claims about problems with the election that have already been considered and rejected by the Supreme Court and other courts. Texas, the brief says, lacks standing to bring such claims, which in any event are barred by laches and are moot, meritless, and dangerous. In Washington, John Decker, Fox News.
President Trump posting on social media Thursday evening saying, "All we ask is courage and wisdom from those who will be making one of the most important decisions in our country's history." Virgin Galactic hopes to launch a rocket test flight from its spaceport in southern New Mexico on Friday. It says the weather forecast isn't great. The company hopes to make a business out of space tourism. They've already sold hundreds of tickets. Another celebrity has been diagnosed with the coronavirus.
Ellen DeGeneres revealing she has tested positive for COVID-19. The comedian and talk show host tweeting a screenshot of a note which reads, "Fortunately, I'm feeling fine right now. Anyone who has been in close contact with me has been notified, and I am following proper CDC guidelines." DeGeneres goes on to suggest she will be focusing on her recovery over the next few weeks, telling fans, "I'll see you all again after the holidays," adding, "Please stay healthy and safe. Love, Ellen." Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
224,000 new cases of the virus reported on Thursday. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hoffaday, I'm Chelsea Nicholas, and I'm the co-chair for this year's G is for Giving, as well as a proud alumna of the University of Guam. G is for Giving is an annual campaign that kicks off on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving and runs through the end of the year. Known as Giving Tuesday, it is an international day of giving, and this year's theme is Weaving Community. On Guam, we know a little something about weaving community, as we're all intertwined and interconnected in the spirit of Inafamaldik. When one of us thrives, the island thrives. This is why I support G is for Giving's mission to support scholarships, programs, and research. As an alumna, I know how difficult it is to balance going to school and worrying about how you're going to pay for school. In these uncertain times, students are even more at risk because of economic hardship beyond their control. G is for Giving aims to bridge that gap and take away at least some of the burden. For more information on how you can give, visit give.uog.edu or call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 735-2957. Have a happy and safe holiday.
Buying a house, apartment, or condo? Selling your home or property? Or maybe you're renting a house, apartment, or condo on Guam. Whatever your real estate needs are, you can count on the professionals at Horizon Properties to take care of you. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonproperties.com or follow them on Facebook at Horizon Properties Guam. Maria Miller and the professionals at Horizon Properties. All you need to know in real estate. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So another big halftime show here that we've all come to know and love so well. Great entertainment, the marching band, the cheerleaders, the acrobats. What we used to have up in the grandstand was synchronized card sections, but because of the Wuhan virus, we can't do that anymore. Still a great show, though.
And those acrobats still doing everything 6 feet apart from each other.
Exactly.
Incredible.
It is. Yeah, and then the cannon fire at the end. It doesn't get any better than that. So here we are going into the second half of Tall Tales on the last day of the week. Tall Tales doesn't air on Saturdays. On Sundays, we have to do without. We wake up early on Monday morning, and at least we've got the Ray Gibson Show to get us through the day. And then finally, at 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon, we're back to Tall Tales. The sun comes out from behind the dark clouds, and life has meaning once again as we deal with the tailgaters out there in our international radio listening audience. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's make the most of this last hour here on Tall Tales on a Friday. So, a couple of shows ago, a couple of shows involved Joe San Augustine's showing us that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Joe opposed the elimination of a non-contributory lifetime pensions for governors, which is clearly within the legislature's prerogative, but co-sponsored a bill to micromanage the Attorney General, which certainly gets into a separation of powers area. But there's nothing in the Organic Act that says that a senator in the Guam legislature has to be consistent about anything. So then we found out a little bit more about the little knowledge is a dangerous thing theme as demonstrated by Clint as he takes over the Guam Power Authority for the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. You know, they run the Power Authority and the Water Authority. So I guess Clint figured he'd give them a break and he'd take over and run the Power Authority for them. And then there's a fabulous four, San Augustine, Barnes, Castro, and Clint, who had this brilliant idea that, and I know this will perk up everyone's ears, if their bill with this brilliant idea becomes law, it's going to cost ratepayers more money. No! You're going to have to pay more for power. And their brilliant idea is Bill 219. Now, I have the bill in front of me here, and I'm going to read what every senator thinks is the most important part of the bill. That is the legislative findings and intent. And that's where a senator is able to write in prose what he thinks his bill will do for everyone. You know, a simple two-section bill that would cure dandruff, falling arches, cancer, typhoons, floods, whatever. So here's the legislative findings on 219. The legislature finds that the use of solar energy on Guam is both economical and beneficial to our island and Pacific community. Now, how does using solar energy benefit the Pacific community? They said island and Pacific community. I thought that our legislators only made laws for Guam. Apparently, they have taken on the burden of the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, the Federated States of Micronesia, Tonga, Polynesia, Easter Island, the whole Pacific community.
Dubonga.
Dubongo, yeah, Dubongo. Yeah, that's an American island, right? And the Democrats are going to make it a state if they take the Senate. All right. So the legislature further finds that the Consolidated Commission on Utilities is working on building solar energy capacity, but finds the need for over 3,000 acres of land and capital of over $1 billion to achieve this. It is the intent of the legislature to move towards cleaner energy production by utilizing. And here's another prohibition on tall tales. Please don't utilize the word utilize when use works just as well. I know utilize sounds like, oh, that guy must have been to college because he's talking about utilization of various natural resources. Yeah. So the legislature wants to utilize rooftops of Guam's educational facilities at Department of Ed, Academy Charter Schools, Community College, University of Guam, and their ancillary buildings as properties eligible for the installation of solar panels to aid in attaining a lower cost for cleaner electricity production and usage, and to provide strengthened legislation to purchase or lease back renewable energy. So that's what this bill is going to do. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I do have some interesting notes here. I'm going to start out with a story by Jerry Partito that ran on the Post a couple nights ago. Senators are in session to consider a number of bills, including Substitute 219, which seeks to authorize the purchase of leaseback of renewable energy purchases for educational institutions. Covered by the bill are education, university, etc. And the substitute bill will allow them to become net metered customers and sell excess power they produce to the Guam Power Authority at a premium. I kind of went into that yesterday. But if the bill is passed, GPA says it must pay 21 cents per kilowatt hour for energy it can produce at 9 cents. This would result in higher rates for non-net metering customers. Here's a quote from General Manager John Beneventi. While we support the intent of Bill 219 to expand solar energy sources, Bill 19 would have unintended consequences of increasing rates for non-net metered customers, including low-income, disadvantaged, and other households with no opportunity to be net metering customers. According to GPA, Bill 219 essentially creates a government subsidy for government-only educational facilities, creating a revenue shortfall that will increase utility rates for more than 47,000 ratepayers. By providing educational institutions free access and the use of the ratepayers' power grid, that's those wires you see running overhead, at no cost, the government is waiving responsibility to repay the millions of dollars borrowed to build, expand, and strengthen the island-wide power grid. While these government agencies and institutions realize savings, GPA says it will be at the expense of all non-solar ratepayers. As the largest renewable energy provider on Guam, we support the expansion of renewable energy usage, but we do not support proposals benefiting a select few at the expense of over 47,000 other customers. In addition, GPA says that if Bill 219 is passed into law, it will circumvent the authority of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, whose members are elected by the people, and the transparent process of raising rates established by public law. Bypassing and circumventing the CCU and GPA, the legislature is arbitrarily raising rates, which is setting a dangerous precedent. This act in itself is a violation of bond covenants, which I'll come to in a minute. GPA agrees and believes that renewable energy is the key to achieving energy independence and promoting a healthier environment. If we're going to meet our goal of 50% renewable energy in 2035, that's 15 years from now. And as I remember, this was basically forced on GPA by the legislature, and 100% renewable energy by 2045. Well, R. James told us the other day why we can never have 100% renewable energy. Because, if you're looking for a scapegoat, it's the sun. The sun doesn't generate any energy at night. Yeah. So at night, you can't...
How dare it go away?
Yeah, how dare it? So you're not going to get any solar power at night. My understanding is that wind power is not going to work here. We have typhoons. We don't have the kind of prevailing winds that are necessary to make those great big propellers spin around. And if we had to go with wind power, think about how much space those things use.
They're eyesores too.
And they emit a really not a dangerous but irritating sound. And some of the reading that I've come across is they kill birds. I mean, there's no such thing as a free lunch when it comes to this energy production. So I think wind power is out. That leaves solar power in the daytime. I doubt that the economies of scale are such that we could ever contemplate nuclear power for the near future.
We ought to.
We should, but I can imagine what the environmental wackos would say about that. You know, they don't want to burn carbon fuel, but they don't want any alternatives either. So this whole idea of the Fab Four, San Augustine, Barnes, Castro, and Rigel, is not a good idea. Now, I have a letter here from the Public Utilities Commission to Joe San Augustine, dated October 23, and I'll read some pertinent parts of that. If I can find the pertinent parts here. I thought I'd marked that before the show. Well, let's try this. The stated purpose of the bill is to promote economy and aid in maintaining a lower cost for cleaner electricity in production and usage. In fact, the actual impact will be the opposite. There will be higher power rates as a result of the bill. Now, this comes from the Guam Public Utilities Commission, which regulates the Power Authority and the Water Authority. Let me take a look at this letter here. Oh, yeah, this is what I was looking for. About the Public Utilities Commission, PUC. I suppose that's an acronym. Jose, how would you pronounce that?
Puck.
Are you sure? Yeah.
PUC.
Yeah, I don't think the members, you know, I like to turn letters into acronyms, like the Bureau of Statistics and Plans is BOSAP for Tall Tales purposes, but I don't think I'm going to start referring to the PUC as the puke.
Or the puke, right?
Somehow, you know,
that's what I was trying to avoid.
Somehow, I don't think that was it. Yeah, that might cause the members to throw up every time they heard it.
Or use an inflection, PUC.
Uh-huh. All right. So this is a letter from bond counsel, a gentleman named John Wang, who works for a law firm called Orrick in the mainland that's bond counsel. And this is what he tells us. The PUC was created in the early 1980s in connection with the Federal Financing Bank refinancing of certain short-term GPA notes. All is described in Section 1423A, Title 49 of the United States Code, Section 11 of the Organic Act of Guam. It must be Title 48, not 49. One of the refinancing financing authorized by the Organic Act was required by the United States Congress to be conditioned on the establishment of an independent rate-making authority by the government of Guam. The purpose of the establishment of the PUC was to keep rate-making out of the political arena. Are you listening, Clint? No! The purpose, and to allow utility rates to be established and approved on a business-like basis. And I got to stop here for a little bit of historical background. There was a senator named Don Parkinson, may he rest in peace. He passed away this year, who had 2 trademarks during the time that he was on the campaign trail. Sempre na guarde costat no pogwa. He was very generous in giving away pogwa at any political rally he went to. And his other trademark was that no matter what, he would not allow the power and water rates to go up. So he enacted by statute. He was able to keep the power rates and water rates static. And in the process, without going into a lot of details, almost ruined those utilities. We came within a gnat's whisker of having the feds put a receiver in to run the water authority around the turn of the century because we were producing hanumtake, which is
yipes.
Yeah, which is not some exotic form of soft drink, by the way. So that's why that's kind of the genesis of the PUC. The purpose of an establishment of the PUC was to keep rate making out of the political arena and to allow utility rates to be established and approved on a business-like basis. The importance of the removal of the rate-making process from the political arena was further recognized by the Guam legislature in connection with the authorization of the 1992 public offering of GPA revenue bonds, and again in connection with the authorization of the 2005 public offering of GWA revenue bonds. The utilities have each included in their respective indenture the authorized government covenant. Section 6.20 of the GPA revenue bond indenture dated December 1, 1992, under which all outstanding GPA senior revenue bonds have been issued, provides as follows. The government, that's the government of Guam, pledges to the holders of all bonds that the government will not repeal, amend, or modify Chapter 12, Title 12, Guam Code annotated in any way that would substantially impair the powers, duties, or effectiveness of the Public Utilities Commission thereunder in relation to the authority and its rates. The authority includes this pledge of the government in this indenture as authorized by Section 8113.3 of the Act. So we have a Public Utilities Commission. You don't hear much about them. They don't have a Janella to put out misinformation. Wait a minute. To put out misinformation on their behalf. They don't make the news very often, but they are extremely important. And the important thing is to take rate making out of the hands of the legislature. And of course, that could not have been done had the legislature not done it. But every once in a while, people wise up and say, hey, this isn't going to work very well. So the Public Utility Public Utility Commission has the ability to regulate rates. So when the Power Authority wants to raise rates, which it very seldom does, then it goes through a drill before the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, and if the Consolidated Commission on Utilities approves the rate, then a petition is filed with the Public Utilities Commission, which can accept or reject the new rate or even modify it. And unless the Public Utility Commission approves, there will be no increase in rates. So that's what the Public Utility Commission is for. And there's a short explanation of bond covenants here from this lawyer named John Wang that he sent to counsel for the Power Authority. And this is what he told the counsel for the Power Authority. You have asked for our advice concerning the potential legal effects of proposed legislation Bill 219 that would, if passed in its current form, amend Section 7116 of Title 17 Guam Code Annotated and Section 5008.2 of Title 5 Guam Code Annotated relating to net metering arrangements and other related provisions. This letter, although not intended as comprehensive legal treatise on the issues raised, will describe some of the significant risks that would be created by enactment of the proposed legislation. This letter should not be read as taking any position on the advisability from a public policy perspective of encouraging the implementation of renewable energy programs. So let's break for the seventh inning stretch, and I notice I got Kellis in the green room. I'll stop my oration here about ORIC and chat with Kellis a little bit, and then come back and finish up the Bill 19 saga.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
Okay, so here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, and as I stroll through the empty bleachers in Wrigley Field, I run into none other than Kellis. How you doing, Kellis?
I am blessed. How are you, Judge?
I'm great.
Well, you know, I'm thinking there when I'm listening to everything that you're saying, you forgot your time as a senator, the all-powerful notwithstanding clause.
Uh-huh.
Can't you? I mean, once they put the notwithstanding in, they can do whatever they want, no matter what any other law says.
That's true, Kellis. That's very true.
So as long as, and I'm sure they did, because I don't think it's actually possible for a senator in Guam to write anything. I think even a thank you card without the notwithstanding clause in it.
Yeah, notwithstanding that it's not December 25th, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas anyhow. Yeah.
We send all condolences, notwithstanding.
Yeah, condolences just in case you didn't actually die.
Yeah, but you know that the notwithstanding thing is a lazy way of drafting legislation.
But you cannot draft. I think it's a law, notwithstanding, that you cannot do a law on Guam, a bill, without the notwithstanding.
Yeah, if it isn't, it probably should be. But what that signifies is that whoever the draftsman is didn't take the time to do the research to see what other areas of the law what he wants to do would affect. And I can't give you an example, but sometimes we have notwithstanding ourselves into serious holes because we didn't consider what laws would be affected. It's a really poor way, style of legislative drafting, but as you point out, it's all too frequent.
Yeah, I mean, it's because the senators and their staff, I mean, they don't actually know what all Guam Code annotated covers because nobody evidently, because, I mean, they're writing laws that are duplicating laws that are on the books, and some of them aren't even that old. But, you know, the important thing is as a senator, you have to get so many bills put into the reading file, otherwise you can't be reelected.
Well, that's popular mythology. I wish that someone would mount a sign that has the first sentence of the Hippocratic Oath, mount that at the front of the Legislative Hall. The first clause, yeah, the first clause of the Hippocratic Oath. First of all, do no harm.
Well, I think, see, they're not doctors, so that has to be, you know, they cannot actually do their job without doing harm.
That's true. They probably see it as a perk.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to sit there and say that that's your mistake, and it must have been because you've been not a senator for a while, or to realize that even though the law says that they can't do something, once you put the notwithstanding clause in, you can do whatever you want.
True enough, Gillis. True enough.
Okay, Judge, you have a good day.
Yeah. And that's true as a matter of legislative drafting, and it's also true in the case of when the legislature or when the government obligates itself, like to these bond covenants. The fact that it has made an agreement with bond issuers doesn't mean that it can't pass a law that violates those bond covenants. Now, the consequences can be really dire, and that's what the Public Utilities Commission and the Consolidated Commission on Utilities have been trying to get across to these guys. You don't want to do this. Okay, I notice I got our Keith online who wants to talk about solar panel refuse. Tell me about it, our Keith.
Hello, Bob. I'm in the environmental field, and so I sort of keep up with this sort of stuff. And I would venture to guess that in this virtue signaling bill, the legislature did not take into account the use of the term green energy is a fallacy. As you indicated previously, there is no such thing as you can't have your lunch and eat it too. There's always trade-offs. One of the aspects about this whole green energy movement that just receives no attention whatsoever is what goes into the manufacture of solar panels, the wind towers, the batteries in Priuses and such cars. They contain heavy metals, toxic, carcinogenic heavy metals. Some of these metals are very rare earth metals, and they are found in very few places on the planet. And many of these places are not exactly friendly to the U.S. necessarily, and an awful lot of them come from China. Well, if you'd like to see an environmental catastrophe in the making, Google or do a web search on rare earth metal mining and look at the unbelievable disasters that are occurring in those mines. All the while, we sit back as a Western culture and view them as green. No, they're not. We're just shifting the toxicity and the environmental damage elsewhere. Now, to the point at hand, not all solar panels are created equal. They're not all made by the same company and the same design. Some tend to be a little bit more environmental friendly when it comes to how to be disposed and how they degrade the environment. Some are not so nice. Some are actually, at the time of their, when it's time to get rid of them, because they do not have an infinite lifespan, are considered hazardous waste. Do we have a hazardous waste disposal facility on island willing or able to accept potentially mass quantities of such materials? And even if we end up with the better of the bunch and they can be treated as solid waste, has the legislature thought about landfill space? Now, third option is recycling. But I think we can all agree that the current state of recycling on Guam leaves a lot to be desired. So I really think this is a large issue that is completely ignored when it comes to the touchy-feely nonsense of green energy.
And that's exactly what it is. Touchy-feely. You hit the nail right on the head. Well, thanks for adding that to the mix, or Keith, you're right on point. And I mentioned that before. 4 senators want to really do some really visible virtue signaling here. They're for renewable energy. They're for using these rooftops on the schools. And why should the Power Authority have such a monopoly on electricity? So I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on this ORIC email, and then I got to kind of sum up a little bit on it. Bill 219 would, among other things, effectively impose further requirements, net metering arrangements related to certain educational institutions, etc. Our view is that if the bill, if enacted, would limit or alter the rights or powers of the PUC, which we promised we wouldn't do, in a manner that would be a breach, that's a bad word, breach, of the government of its covenant and GPA's bond indenture. Any transaction that would involve net metering arrangements with GPA, the use of GPA's transmission system, the use of GPA's distribution system, or the provision of standby or backup power by GPA must be subject to the approval of the PUC after consideration of appropriate rate-making policies, including the appropriate allocation of costs on various ratepayer classes. A breach of the government's indenture covenant would be a default under the GPA indenture. Any such default would result in acceleration of the due date of the principal of GPA's outstanding senior revenue bonds, an acceleration clause. In other words, you promise to pay over 20 years, but if you're in default, the whole thing is due tomorrow. And could subject the government itself, beyond the walls of GPA, to contractual remedies, including damages for breach of its contract with the GPA bondholders. A little bit more on that same subject. The government would have breached its contractual obligations in a manner that would be default under the GPA indenture. Indenture defaults can result in the acceleration of the bonds, and the government might find itself liable for significant damages. That's exactly what we need, is to have a court award a large amount of damages against the government of Guam in these time of scarce resources. And then beyond that, in addition, of course, the various other corollary effects of any limitation or alienation of the PUC rate-making authority in respect of GPA including such things as reevaluation of GPA's bond credit ratings. In other words, our credit rating may go down, which means we can charge less for the bonds, are beyond the scope of this letter. As you know, any decrease in GPA's credit rating would increase its borrowing costs the next time it sells bonds. So this is just a bad deal all the way around, except for one thing. It makes the four sponsors here, San Augustine, Barnes, Castro, and Rigel, feel really good about themselves because they're with it in the year 2020. They're for renewable energy. Let's hear it for green energy. Yeah. And let's see. Oh, here's a section of the bill that I missed. Here's one section. On the day that the solar panels are installed on the roofs of all the schools, a portrait shall be installed in each of the classrooms of the school, which is a current picture of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is kind of the founder of the Green New Deal. So we want to show everybody, we want our children to be inculcated with the tenets of environmental wackoism while they're still in school. And of course, we've got to lead by example with our Bill 219. I'm surprised I missed that when I read the bill before. Yeah. Okay, so let's stop here for a second. We have two utilities, power and water. They are governed by a 5-member commission. The Consolidated Commission on Utilities has the board of directors for the two utilities. Each of the utilities has a general manager, employees, et cetera, and they operate on their own, subject to the policies set by the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. It's the Power Authority's job, of course, to generate power and deliver it to homes and businesses by means of these things we see overhead called wires. That's the transmission system. The Power Authority has to charge its customers for the delivery of that electricity to homes and businesses. So it must set rates. Now, there are some industries that don't lend themselves very well to marketplace competition. If you got mad at Guam Power Authority, you couldn't call them up like you do with your cell phone provider and say, I'm done with you guys. I'm going with Jones Power Company. So since the Power Authority has a government-sanctioned monopoly, the market factors can't be relied on to set the price for electricity. Therefore, electricity is what's called a regulated industry. So there has to be some neutral, objective body that sets the rates for these government monopolies like power and water. Ours is called the Public Utilities Commission. And I know from my own knowledge that they have contracts with consulting companies that are really whiz-bangs at things like setting power rates, et cetera. They are extremely competent people involved. So if the Power Authority wants to increase a rate, that's the route they have to go through. If they want to call a short holiday on the fuel adjustment factor, they can't even do that by themselves. They have to have the Public Utilities Commission approve that. Now, our ability to finance improvements to the system is based on the fact that we have a Public Utilities Commission that the politicians up until now have left alone. And the fact that the government of Guam agrees that the legislature won't screw around with the PUC is an important part of the bond obligations. And the Fab Four here want to break that obligation with this harebrained scheme. And if they pass this and override the governor's veto, the bottom line for everybody out there in our international radio listening audience is you're going to pay more for your power. And it won't be something that has a short-term duration, because the next time we want to borrow money, we're going to have to pay more to borrow money, because we will have defecated, in our own mess kit when it comes to borrowing money. So it's just a bad deal all the way around. Now, solar energy is something that can be put to good use. I'm going to use the word could be utilized. Well, doesn't that sound smart? And if the legislature wanted to get involved with that, it would be very easy for them to weigh in on that particular provision by passing a law that said the power authority, that the rooftops of all the buildings, the university, the GCC, the schools, etc., may be used by the power authority for the installation of solar panels. They could give the GPA the ability to do that, and that's all they need to do. And if the power authority and the CCU think it's a good idea, they'll do it. If they don't, they won't. But I got news for you guys for San Augustine, Barnes, Castro, and Rigel. Just because you are members of the legislature, that doesn't mean that you should take it upon yourself to teach the Guam Power Authority how to suck eggs, because that's exactly what you're trying to do. All right, I got to take a short break here, and we're going to be heading down the home stretch. I got Tim back on the line. No, this is a Tim, another Tim. Head down the home stretch with me.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
Contact tracing is key to containing COVID-19. That's why we're introducing the Guam COVID Alert app. According to Oxford University, for every 100 to 200 downloads of this app, 100 infections can be prevented and 1 life can be saved. Help save a life. Go to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download the app from the App Store or Google Play now. Add your phone to the COVID fight. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
You know, today, Jose, is our day for Tims. I hope that because I've had 2 Tims on the program that our international radio listening audience doesn't think I've become timid as the wheels of time grind on. Good afternoon, Tim.
Well, this one's just a tiny Tim.
A tiny Tim, all right. Well, I never met a Tim I didn't like, so go for it, Tim.
Oh, very well. Well, we are running short on time here, so let's sum this up quickly. First point I wanted to make is that the Department of Education is the largest consumer of electricity in the government of Guam and possibly the largest consumer of electricity on the island, period. And that's mostly due to the antiquated and dilapidated schools in which the Department of Education almost said performs maintenance on, but we know better than go down that road.
Okay.
The second point is that the Department of Education is also the largest conveyor of land in the government of Guam, which means that if the Public Utilities Commission was really serious about the aspect of going green and the solar farms that Simon Sanchez poignantly described a month ago on Ray's show, he would definitely want the cooperation of the Department of Education in order to facilitate all these solar farms that would help the island go from petroleum-based power generation to renewable energy-based power generation. Another aspect that we want to look at is that even though the bond covenants is the focal point and the PUC is utilizing a fear tactic that we're violating the bond covenant and that's going to cause a default on the bond and we'll have to pay everything off at one time. The government of Guam will declare bankruptcy and then we'll just go on with life as Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands did, and we won't have to worry about anything. The aspect that I'm getting at is that no, the law is not violating the bond covenants. The law is simply turning the Department of Education into a power generation station. And it's simply selling the power that it generates to the other consumers or to the consumers of GPA. Therefore, we're not really decreasing the revenue of GPA. But what we are doing is we're kind of offsetting the cost savings that the Department of Education would incur by going solar or going, because the Department of Education could go completely off-grid. And then you're talking about several millions of dollars every month that GPA will not be receiving from the Department of Education. And this situation, the Department of Education is offering to create a power station that GPA can utilize and therefore become less dependent on the petroleum-based generation that we use with Cabras Island and Tangisan, which means that we can actually start cycling down these generation plants, or we can actually have those go on standby and generate power when needed. So there's other angles that you need to look at in this particular bill.
Well, let me start looking at some of the angles, okay? Mm-hmm. First of all, if it's a fear tactic, I'm afraid. Second, territories cannot declare bankruptcy, so if the worst happened, we would be pretty much stuck with it. Third, I've pretty much said that if we wanted to generate power on the rooftops of the schools, I don't know why we would want anybody to do that but the Power Authority. The Department of Education is not exactly doing a bang-up job educating kids, and to saddle them with this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It would also, what this bill amounts to is this. It's giving a subsidy to a business that would compete with the Power Authority on very unfavorable terms to the Power Authority. And then finally, Tangisan closed down, 15 years ago or something like that, I think? Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's still fully operational.
No, I don't think so.
On your first point, a territory absolutely can declare bankruptcy. The Virgin Islands are still dealing with their bankruptcy. Puerto Rico has been considering it for the last 5 years.
The reason that Puerto Rico has the PROMESA legislation is precisely because states and territories cannot declare bankruptcy, including the Virgin Islands. But go on with what you're saying.
Right. Well, the issue is that the premise of the government being obligated to this bond is by any sense in the bond market, in which all government, municipality bonds, government bonds, state bonds, federal bonds are all backed by the security of the federal government, based on the ability to tax.
Hold on. All state and municipal bonds are backed by the security of the federal government?
Yes.
When did this
based on
happen?
the ability to tax.
I got to go, Tim, but I appreciate your calling in. The music's starting, the end of the program. Thanks for calling Tall Tales.
Definitely. Thanks, Bob. Food for thought and something to sleep on.
All right.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The elusive relief package. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Congress still scuffling to find a compromise plan to provide Americans relief from the coronavirus economic impact. House Speaker Pelosi says there won't be a deal this week and maybe not next either.
Now, if we need more time, then we take more time. But we have to have a bill.
That could push the agreement beyond Christmas. The House Republican leader says that's unacceptable.
Republican House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy of California accusing Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of purposely holding up the Paycheck Protection Program because she simply wanted to hurt the president's re-election chances.
More than 40 times the Republicans have brought to the floor the ability to vote to bring assistance. More than 40 times the Democrats have said no.
No, said McCarthy, despite the fact that there's more than $138 billion still sitting there for small businesses in the PPP program.
Fox's Kevin Corke, evidence of the need. The government reported Thursday applications for unemployment last month were higher than expected. The swing states being sued by the state of Texas have filed their responses to the lawsuit with the U.S. Supreme Court. Now the justices must decide whether they will hear the case. The charges Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin violated the Constitution with election changes not approved by state lawmakers. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton telling Fox News at Night.
I'm hoping